Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's research rundown. My name is Courtney Pinkard, and I am the reference coordinator at the Alabama Department of Archives and History. We are going to be discussing one of my favorite research resources today, fire insurance maps. But before we get started, I did want to have a couple of announcements to make. So first of all, I did want to let everybody know that this is going to be our last research rundown for a little bit. We're going to put it on hiatus for the summer, and we're really excited that we will be bringing back our in-person workshops, and those will be later this summer. We'll announce the dates and everything soon, so stay tuned to our website for that. The research rundown is going to resume in October, so we'll come back in the fall. We'll have an entirely new slate of topics. We'll have some great guest speakers, and so I hope that you will join us in the fall in October for the next installment of the rundown. And like I said, you want to stay tuned for sure to our website and social media channels to get information about the in-person workshops that will be happening later in the summer. As always, research rundowns are recorded and they are posted to our YouTube channel. Sometimes it takes a couple days for us to get them posted, but they will live there. And so you can go back and review older research rundowns. And if you want to refer to this recording again later, if you missed something, or you just want to just view it again, or maybe share it, with a friend or family member, then they live on their own little playlist on our YouTube channel. And finally, I did want to mention that we have another food for thought coming up. It's going to be on May 19th. It'll be at noon, and it is both in person here at the archives and also virtual. So we hope that you will join us for that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started talking about fire insurance maps. I'm very excited to share this resource with you if you're not familiar with fire insurance maps. They're really great. So the first fire insurance maps were created in the 1860s. They were used as a quick reference by insurance underwriters to understand the risk of insuring certain properties. So if you're insuring a livery stable next to like a blast furnace, well, that's pretty risky. But if the same livery stable were to be, say, in a residential neighborhood, it just doesn't carry the same level of risk for fire. So that's sort of how these maps helped the underwriters on the ground almost have a bird's eye, or what we would almost think of as like a satellite view of the neighborhood that they were in. So the insurance maps, they tend to focus on manufacturing, industry, large metropolitan areas most of the time. And so they focus on downtown or business districts, but they are going to incorporate some urban residential neighborhoods too. Now, of all the companies that specialized in creating these insurance maps, the Sanborn Map Company is the best known and the most prolific. And if you're familiar with insurance maps, I'm sure you've heard the name Sanborn. Sometimes it's become sort of synonymous with insurance mapping, the name Sanborn. Um, the insurance maps can be helpful for us today because they can help us find old street names or street numbers that have changed over time, structures that might no longer exist, and you can also use them to see businesses that were previously operated at a given location where the structure is still the same, but there may be a different business there today. The Sanborn Map Company was founded in 1866 by Daniel Alfred Sanborn, and it's still in operation today. Between the 1860s and the 1950s, the Sanborn Company mapped over 12,000 cities and towns across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Their maps were hand-drawn and color-coded to represent building materials, and they also show the number of stories a building has, the placement of its doors, walls, and windows, and they differentiate between commercial and residential properties. Now, starting around 1920, the mapping companies began issuing updates by pasting over parts of the existing map. Unfortunately, That means we usually can't tell what's under the pasted on section, and the original base map gets obscured. On top of that, it's not always clear when the update was made, so we can't tell if that pasted on section was added in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, or maybe even later. But nevertheless, insurance maps are still an interesting and fun resource. There are a few different ways that you can get to the Sanborn maps, some digital and some analog. Pre-1923 maps are available online through the University of Alabama's Map Library website and the Library of Congress's website. They have a vast collection of Sanborn maps that they are steadily digitizing. Now, post-1923 maps are still under copyright, and therefore they can't be digitized and put online. But you can still work with them in hard copy if you come to the research room, and you can have one of our staff retrieve the hard copy map from our map storage. All Sanborn maps begin with two types of indexes, the street index and the map index. The street index is a listing of the streets covered within the map in alphabetical order. The map index shows the mapped area with colored panels and numbers indicating which map sheet the street is depicted on. If a street is not covered by one of these colorful little squares, then it wasn't included in the final map. You'll also notice on this map index there's an additional box, and it contains the map key. The key will help you interpret the information that you're going to see on the map, so it's a good idea to study it before you start looking through the individual map sheets. The key will show the color coding scheme and explain what other notations or abbreviations mean. Some keys are very elaborate, like the one on the left, but older keys may be more basic, like the one on the right. A good rule of thumb for Sanborn maps specifically is that red or pink usually signifies a brick building, yellow signifies a frame building, and blue signifies a stone building. The abbreviation D or DWG indicates a dwelling or a home, and S indicates a store of some kind. Today we're going to take a look at an example of a part of the city of Montgomery that's undergone some drastic changes since the early 1900s when this Sanborn map was drawn. We're going to focus on the streets outlined with the blue square, specifically the area captured by sheet number 36. This Sanborn map was drawn in 1910, and here's that same square of land today. It's the interstate interchange where I-65 and I-85 meet in downtown Montgomery. But in 1910, it was a majority black residential neighborhood. And here's a close-up of sheet number 36. So this is the map sheet number 36, showing all the houses that once stood between South Holt Street and Dorsey Street, and again, this is from 1910. Note that most of the structures on this map are marked D for dwelling, and all but one of them are yellow, indicating they are frame construction. The lone brick building is up at the top right corner of the map, and it has the letter S inside for store. According to the city directory, it's a grocery store operated by Mr. Andrew C. Brown at 358 South Holt Street. Andrew and his wife Katie, along with Katie's brother Nehemiah Patterson, lived and worked at the store. Notice the number 2 in the upper left corner of the pink building. This denotes a two-story structure. So maybe the occupants lived upstairs and ran the grocery out of the bottom level. Katie's younger sister, Gertrude, and her husband, Frank Wilson, lived in the house next door that touches the side of the store. When we find the Brown, Patterson, Wilson households in the 1910 census, we get more information about their ages, occupations, and relationships. Andrew Brown is listed as the manager of the grocery store, and Katie is its proprietor. Although Gertrude was a graduate of Tuskegee Institute and a teacher by profession, she was also the census enumerator. And we see her signature up at the top of the page where she and her family appear in the 1910 census. And lastly, we've even got a photograph of Gertrude from her Find a Grave memorial page. Returning to our view of the neighborhood, let's take a look at another household, this time on Chilton Street. From the 1910 Montgomery City Directory, we learn that Mr. Nathan Nesbitt lives at number 15 Chilton Street, and that he also operates an undertaking business called Nesbitt and Company. And the office for the undertaking company was located on Dexter Avenue. From the census, we find that Mr. Nesbitt's household was actually quite large. Not only do we have Nathan and his wife Fanny and their two kids, but also Nathan's mother-in-law, Margaret Pope, a young girl named Annie Lingstaff, who is listed as a nurse, Nathan's brother-in-law, Robert Pope, his wife Beulah, and their three children. And they are all living at number 15 Chilton Street. It was a full house. Next, let's head over to Dexter Avenue and have a look at an example of what a business district might look like in a larger city. I've zeroed in on the couple of blocks around Mr. Nesbitt's office, which is located at 220 Dexter Avenue. At the corner of Dexter and South Lawrence Street, we see a brick building labeled Advertiser. I'm going to back that up. Labeled Advertiser, which refers, of course, to the Montgomery Advertiser newspaper. And in the middle, we've got the Grand Opera House. You can even see the outline of the stage at the back of the building. And to the right of that, we've got some storefronts and a little frame building, which is the office of Nesbitt and Company Undertakers. The rest of the block is filled out by houses, mostly frame structures, but there's also one duplex that's a combo of brick and frame construction. Notice the red border around the yellow fill, and then the YMCA. Now let's have that satellite view back of this block as it stands today. With the exception of the Advertiser building in the top left corner of the block, most of the houses that are gone. Most of even the businesses, the structures are gone. The block has been transformed into mostly glorious parking lots. Not very surprising, as parking is now a hot commodity in any downtown area. Looking across South McDonough Street, we find a similar layout of storefronts on Dexter Avenue backed by houses. There's a hotel at the corner of Dexter and South Hull, and a laundry facing South McDonough Street. Montgomery natives will probably know already what's there today, but let's go ahead and put up the modern satellite view. It's the Alabama Judicial Building, which houses the state Supreme Court, both courts of appeal, and our state law library. Now, returning to the task at hand, let's get back to 1910 and recall that Mr. Nesbitt operated his undertaking business at 220 Dexter Avenue. If you flip to the back of the city directory and look under the heading Undertakers, you'll find 4 entries. 2 have asterisks beside them and 2 do not. The businesses marked with asterisks are Black-owned businesses that serve Black clientele, and the businesses without asterisks are white-owned and serve white clientele. If we enlarge the block, we can get a better view. And here we can see not only Mr. Nesbitt's office, but also that of the Leak Undertaking Company, which was a white undertaking office that was just around the corner facing South Lawrence Street. And you can actually see the word Undertakers written in that structure that's directly behind the Advertiser office. And here we have a photograph of Dexter Avenue taken around the turn of the century. Right away, we can pick out the Advertiser building with its distinctive stone arch construction, And if you look really closely, you can see some of the storefronts further up the street on the other side of the Grand Opera House, which was set back from the curb. This is how Dexter Avenue would have looked for Mr. Nesbitt when he came to work at his office in this block of Dexter Avenue. Now, while the Sanborn Company may have been the most well-known players in the fire insurance game, they were by no means the only outfit producing insurance maps. We hold some maps that were generated by another mapping company in our collections at the archives. This company was called the Alabama Inspection and Rating Bureau, abbreviated AIRB, and it was founded in Montgomery sometime around 1913. Its longtime manager was Mr. Lewis P. Goodwin, and you might see his name appear on a few of our AIRB maps. The business operated in Montgomery until 1960 at least, but based on the city directory information, it appears that Mr. Goodwin retired around 1945 and someone else took over running the company. The quality of the maps produced by the AIRB isn't as high as the Sanborn product, but the maps capture smaller communities that otherwise wouldn't have been covered by Sanborn. Our earliest AIRB map is dated 1911 and the latest is 1957. We have a total of 351 maps created by the AIRB, and they've been digitized and made available on our digital collections webpage. Let's have a look at a couple of examples of these AIRB maps. This is an AIRB map of the town of Orville, originally created in the 1930s but corrected in 1954. Interestingly, the town of Orville hasn't changed all that much in 68 years. Here are some examples of buildings that were included on the map and still exist today. But of course, some things do change. The store at the corner of Main Street and Broad Street is no longer there, and the office building across from it is gone now too. This map is a good example of how corrections were made over time. Notice these two areas where the original map has been pasted over to indicate structures that are no longer there. Sometimes if you look really hard, you can see a vague outline and maybe even enough of a label to tell what used to be in that spot, but most of the time it's completely obscured. This map also demonstrates how street numbers are annotated. Notice these buildings have two sets of numbers and one number is in parentheses. The bottom number is how the building was numbered previously. So in this case, the storefront was number 21, and now the street numbers have changed and it is number 203, or at least it was at the time that this map was corrected in the 1950s. Sanborn maps use this same technique for noting a change in the street numbers, and they can be really helpful for tracking those changes over time. Our final example is a map from the little town of Campbell, up in the far northwestern corner of the state. Parts of downtown Campbell were badly impacted by a tornado on April 27, 2011, but a lot of the buildings shown in this map from 1952 are still intact. I think this map is a good contrast to the previous example because overall it's just not as pretty. The buildings look like they were colored in with a crayon or a colored pencil. None of the buildings are labeled as to what they were. Some buildings aren't color coded at all. And while it may not be the most informative of maps, it does still capture a snapshot of a small community's history that otherwise might not have been preserved. All right, so we will go ahead and take questions, or if you have any comments, you can share those too with us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can do that. stop sharing the screen there. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and take, if you have any questions about Sanborn maps or any other kinds of maps, any comments, maybe some fun experiences you've had using fire insurance maps. Um, so if you have, like I said, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat. C. Davis says, timely talk, adding fire insurance maps as a cross-reference to census enumeration district maps. Yes, so that is a good point. That might be an interesting way to take those enumeration district maps, which are available for, I believe it's 1940 and 1950. Of course, the 1950 information was just released in April. And so, yeah, that might be a good strategy if you're researching in one of those large urban areas like Montgomery, Mobile, Birmingham, Huntsville, the larger urban centers in the state. That would be a really interesting way to look at the enumeration districts and then kind of focus more in on the individual sections of the Sanborn map. Any other questions? It was a little brief today, but I hope that if you're interested in viewing Sanborn maps, um, then you could definitely, you want to access them online. That's probably one of the most convenient ways. But if you want to see one of those later maps, that's the after 1923, you can always come into the research room as well. All right, C. Davis says, can you show me find let's see, can you show, I'm assuming us, where to find the insurance maps and save them, and how did you do overlay? Okay, so the insurance maps, they are available from a few different resources. I would recommend you can certainly start for Alabama. You can start with the archives website, and under our map database, you can look up the insurance map by municipality. So that's one way to get those that have been digitized. The Library of Congress has a separate Sanborn map section. They are constantly, adding more and more maps. To their site. They have really great coverage too, and they have other maps, of course, besides Alabama. So if you're researching in other places, definitely check out Library of Congress. And then again, there is a cutoff where some of them they can't be digitized due to copyright. Um, and so, you're unfortunately restricted to viewing them in person, like the physical paper maps. And we can make those available to you here in the research room. Now, as far as the overlays that I did for the PowerPoint presentation, I just copied, did a screenshot of Google Maps, the view, that the satellite view that Google Maps has today, and then just pasted it into the slide and sort of played around with the animation features to make it appear and disappear. So there's not really a tool that I know of, that I'm aware of, for overlaying, a modern map on top of a Sanborn map. That's just something that I do when I'm using them for research. I like to look at the modern satellite view and compare it to the Sanborn map view, just to help people understand, if I'm doing research for a client, I want to help them understand what's there today. Sometimes it's the same structure. If it was, say, their family's home, the home may still be standing today, or it may not be. And so I like to give them a view of, what it looked like in, say, 1900 or 1910, and then what it looks like today. And since I've been doing that, I figured it would be an interesting kind of visual for the PowerPoint presentation. It does take a little bit of time and and a little playing around with PowerPoint and kind of sizing things appropriately and everything. But I think it's, like I said, a good visual. Um, and let's see. So I'm going to see if I'm going to share my screen real quick one more time. C. Davis asked if I can show on screen I'm assuming how to get to the maps on our website. So let me share my screen again real quick. just a moment and I will get it pulled up. Okay, so we're going to start at the archives website here, and then I would go search our collection. Let's hide this there. Search our collections, maps, and then from the drop-down menu, select insurance maps, and then you can give it a municipality. So let's just say Montgomery is the first one. And for the maps that have been digitized, you'll see a hyperlink over here on the right. If it hasn't been digitized, then I'm going to scroll down to see how that hyperlink column is empty here. So these are the Sanborn maps, the later maps that were created, in the mid to late 1920s and further on. You'll notice in the middle column how there's so many different years listed. Again, it's going to be those maps that have had updates pasted over the top of the original, and we don't always know when that was done. So on a given sheet, given map sheet, you don't know like what that information was or when that information was current as of. So you could be looking at a sheet, there's multiple places pasted over on it, and so we know it reflects a time range, like a range of years, but we don't know exactly when each change was made. So that's why we just had to give a really broad list of dates or years, because at the beginning of the map, it might say, the years, hey, we updated it, in 30 and 32 and 35, but on the individual map sheets, you can't always tell which little pasted on section was done when. So I hope that makes sense. But that's how you can access the maps on our website. All right. So let's see if I can stop sharing my screen again here. Okay, we're going to stop sharing. All right. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. And if we don't have any more questions, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. But you can, if you think of anything later on, you can always contact the research room if you have any questions. We are open Tuesday through Saturday, 8:30 to 4:30. If you want to come in, pull some of those later Sanborn maps, then definitely come in to visit us and we'll be happy to make those available. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today, and be sure to tune in for the Food for Thought on May 19th, and keep an eye out for those in-person workshops that will be announced here in just a little bit. Okay, thanks guys. Bye-bye.